Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another Carcast episode, and I am bringing you a very special guest, my sister, Ashely.
Hi.
Me and her get into a lot of really interesting conversations about life, philosophy, social work, mental health, and I just wanted to continue one of the conversations that we were having, and one of the things that we were talking about was social work and being in that field and working with a lot of individuals, something that she's very experienced in and something that she's done with a lot of her life. And I believe that more and more nowadays we hear the terminology mental health, we hear the terminology anxiety, we hear a lot of terminology, and we don't really speak or take time to speak to the people that are actually working with the individuals that are going through a lot of these things. And I thought today would be a really good day to sit down and have a conversation about somebody who's been in the field and her thoughts and her feelings about it. So, Ashely, please share it all with us. When did you get into it? How did you get into it? And yeah, I'd love to hear it all.
So, social work. How did I come to land on social work? Throughout life, my family used the services of social workers a lot. So it sort of seemed like a logical choice for me to sort of give back and be able to work with people that needed help like I did. And also sometimes some of the services that we received, I felt dehumanized us and just were really stripped some of our dignity away a little bit. And I thought maybe it would be good for somebody who's been on the other side to get into that and really be able to understand the people that we're helping and working with. It was actually funny though, because when I finished high school, everyone thought I was going to for sure go into theater, for sure go to school for that. But I was like, no, I need a real job and something more secure, which I'll get into. It's not really the case for social work anyway. But yeah, so ended up going to school for that, for social work, and ended up getting into the area of addictions and mental health.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't initially think I was going to get into addictions and mental health. I had done placements, like student placements with like abused women and children or children with special needs. And I realized pretty quickly that that wasn't a group I could actually work with, or those weren't groups that I was able to have good enough boundaries with. Maybe hit a little bit too close to home, or not 100% sure what it was, but in social work it's very important to have good boundaries and to be able to continue to serve your clients with that. And I couldn't leave it at work. I was thinking about it all the time at home. So when I finally found addictions and mental health, I was like, A, this is fascinating, and B, I can separate it enough from myself. So that was pretty cool. There is a long history of addiction and mental health in my family. So actually I thought that might be too close to home for me. But what it's done is give me a better understanding of those people in my life who growing up thought were maybe intentionally hurtful. And it's really given me the realization that they were just unwell. And they gave what they could. And it just didn't end up being enough for me. But it was as much as I was helping other people, it also helped me.
I like how you talk about those aspects of addiction. And I dealt with my own forms of stuff growing up as well. So, due to your past and the things that you grew up with, right? You saw addictions and you saw a lot of these kind of behaviors. And then going into social work, what changed? Better ask this question as, did something shift the way that you saw it before versus how you learned about it and you saw it after? And if there was something that changed, what was it?
That's a good question. I think the way that I thought about how I was going to be helping people. It was like, I would learn the right way to help people and what they needed and give that to them. And the more I studied and the more I learned and actually worked with people, the more I realized people know what they need. I don't know what they need. They know what they need. And my biggest job was to motivate them to be able to do it and give them the support that they maybe felt like they didn't have, and to give them the courage to to make those steps and make those changes. It's scary. It's scary to make big life changes, especially if it's something you thought was your only choice sometimes.
So if you were to say, if you were to define the word addiction, how would you define it? Can you define it?
Technically.
Technically, there's like a
the
dictionary definition.
Sure. It's something that someone continues to do, which has adverse consequences, and they continue to do it despite that.
So is it very similar to like Einstein's idea of like trying to do the same thing over and over again and trying to get a different result?
Possibly. Like, I don't know that people are always thinking about what the result will be. And that's sometimes part of the problem. But definitely, like, doing a lot of the same things, sure. But it's like that instant gratification. It's like, this is what it's going to do for me now, and I'm not thinking about what the outcome will be, and I'm not expecting a different outcome. It's just, this is what I need in the moment right now. So a lot of times people feel like they don't have another option. They can't find another way to feel the way that makes them feel in that moment.
What's interesting as we're discussing this, and I'm thinking about my own situations with drinking and drugs and all that, I believe that it was more of a shortcut for me to get closer to who I want to be, not really realizing that it just took me further away. It's like, so for example, I felt very anxious in situations being around a lot of people, so I'm like, well, I'm going to drink. Drinking will give me what I need to do. So every time I would go to these events, I would drink. And then it's like, oh, now I have my courage and now I can be who I need to be, not realizing that if I'm depending on something to give me a power, then I'm actually taking away my own. And instead of asking myself the question of why I actually needed it, but thinking that I did, like we were talking about before, when I was growing up, in there's certain situations, like I felt that, like it took me so, like I'm like in these situations where I'm like, I need to fit in. So I need to drink and I need to do all these things because that allows me to fit in and to be like, to feel like I belong to this group, but it's not belonging. It's literally fitting in, and it made me very tired. And I never asked myself the question of, if I need to try so hard to be myself in a group of people, then maybe that group of people are not the people that I need to be with. Not that there's anything wrong with them. It's just, we all enjoy different things in life. We all connect with other aspects of life. We all have different needs in life, and sometimes it's just not there with those people at that time. So I believe that drinking was my shortcut to happiness. Drinking was my shortcut to confidence. Drugs was my shortcut to being whatever it is I needed to do. And after years and years of, it's been about 6 or more years now, that I realized that everything that became a shortcut then has only made it longer for me to achieve what I needed to do today.
It's interesting that you say that. There's a huge link between people who have anxiety disorders, especially social anxiety disorders, and drinking. Huge link. Because drinking is a central nervous system depressant. So oftentimes when we get anxious, our bodies get anxious. Like, we physiologically get anxious. And our heart rates go up and we're sweating and we can't control these things. And alcohol does help control that. It brings that down. So in a way, it settles us down physically enough to get into a situation. But unfortunately, it also impairs the way we think. So sometimes our judgment's a little different than it would be otherwise.
Yep.
Right? And some people say, well, that's your true self. You're taking down all your inhibitions, and then that's going to be your true self. And I don't always agree with that. It's like, I know a lot of people who do things that don't align with their values when they're intoxicated, when they're high. And when they come to and when they're sober, they're like, I don't know why I did that. I don't even know who that person is. And I think that we're all capable of doing things to get what we think we need in the moment. But I honestly do think it changes people.
And I like how you say that, because there is beliefs that the Arabic beliefs and other philosophies believe that they call it spirits. Because when you're drinking your spirits, is as something has taken possession of you, as if you're somewhere else, where the line is, well, that wasn't me, I would never do that. And the more I read about it and the more I listen about it, the more I believe, because there's nights where I blacked out. But I was there physically doing all these things and acting out. And the next day I'm like, what did I do? And they're like, oh, you did this, this, and this. You're like, but that's not what I would do.
Yeah.
But people are like, well, that's the real you. I'm like, that is not the real me. This is the real me. And what happened there was something completely different. So,
and that's tough for a lot of people to reconcile, because our society does say so much like, well, you know, if you do something while you're impaired, that's the real you. So then people start to get this negative view of themselves. Like, is that actually me? Is that who I am? Do I deserve good things in life? I stole. I hurt somebody. I cheated on a partner. I did these things that I wouldn't normally do. Maybe that is who I am. Maybe I'm a bad person. Maybe those aren't my real values. Maybe my values suck. And what that does to a person's self-esteem is it keeps them in that place. They're like, I don't deserve better than this. That's a really tough place to get out of. And if you don't have those social structures and those support systems in place to help you realize you're a good person, you are worthy, people stay stuck there for a really long time.
Because yesterday's experience doesn't have to be today's truth. It's like you went through it, so today you don't have to. It's not like you went through it, so today you must hold on to it. It's like I did a lot of interesting things as a kid, but because I did that, I am allowed, like I gave myself permission to be who I am today. It's like, thank you, younger version of me, for going through the pain and the suffering and the idea of not knowing what's going to go on and everything that you went through. Because you did that, I am more clear on who I am today. But if you didn't, then I'd have to go through it today. So I honor my past instead of try to delete my past or cling on to it and be like, how could I do it? Well, you did it because you didn't know, and now you know, so now you have a choice.
And there's another piece to that too, is like sometimes things happen to people that are beyond your control, and sometimes at a time when something happens to us, we're younger, we don't have the same experiences, and maybe the way we respond to that isn't the way we would now. You know, it's like, be kind to yourself and give yourself some grace and forgiveness for the things that you did to cope with something at a time you didn't know how to cope with. And that goes for a lot of things: substance use, behaviors. The idea is that we grow from them, and of course growing is easier to do when you have that support and that love and that self-acceptance. It's harder for people to get to that point sometimes.
I think it's true. And also the mantras, to take away mantras out of our heads. Like, can't teach an old dog new tricks. I was born like this. I can't change. This is who I am.
And that's a very interesting thing that you said, that these mantras and these sayings, because the 12-step program is so full of them.
Really?
Yeah, one step at a time, one day at a time. Sometimes they can be good because they can be good reminders, but sometimes they're negative things. And sometimes they seem like they should be good things, but they're actually harmful.
I believe that there's a lot of limiting beliefs, and a limiting belief is that mantra: can't teach an old dog new tricks. My dad's 73. The guy's still learning. He's still changing, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, we tend to cling on to things that we choose to make it easier for us to believe. Like, well, I can't do this because this is who I am. It's like, but it's in my horoscope and this is who I am. Like, yes, there's truths to things, but there's also opportunities and changes and choices to everything as well.
Choice, yeah.
And like you said, the 12-step program, it's these ones, it's just like, well, there's a limiting belief, and then there's a belief that allows me to break through perceived limitations. Well, one step at a time, 100%, I agree with that, because we can't just do everything all together. It's like, we think we multitask, but we don't. We're not really focusing on what we need to do. It's like, well, I can have a conversation, but I can also text. So I'm doing the same thing, yes, but you're not fully present.
It's divided. And
it's very divided into it. And it's nowadays, more than anything, with the internet and the phones and like everything, it's just like, we're so triggered with that addiction. New age addiction is dopamine.
Yeah.
But taking time, one step at a time, you know, I have worth. I have value, and understanding and getting into that instead of being like, where I was born is where I'm going to die.
Yeah. It's funny that you said that too, because that's when I talk to a lot of my clients, there's a certain amount that sometimes we share with our clients, and it's different for every worker what they're comfortable sharing. But I found it's good to build rapport, to share a little bit about my past with people, and it's like, this is where I come from and this is where I am now. And they're like, no way, there's no way. And I'm like, yeah, there is a way, and you see where I am right now, and you're able to do that. So I think it's really important when you're working with people to build that rapport, and you're expecting them to tell you some really personal things about yourself without offering anything of yourself. And sure, there's, psychiatry, psychology,
The
psychotherapy
Freudian kind of thing, right?
It's like, I'm this being, and you're telling me things, and I don't share anything back and forth. But it's like, it gets to the point where, especially in addictions, I find people are lacking that connection and lacking that I guess, model for change, and seeing somebody model that, hey, this can happen. So hearing about it and saying, you know what, maybe I can be in that place someday.
It's, I've had a lot of friends that have had drug addictions and alcohol addictions, and I've actually had friends that have committed suicide. And the one thing that people don't talk about is you go into these programs and you do well because you have a community and a support system and you feel phenomenal. A lot of organizations, I wish they created a community outside, because I had friends that went in and then they came out and they felt great, and then everything around them, past experience, past everything kind of came to them, and they're like, I can't do it. See, I tried. I'm a failure. I'm going to keep on going to this. And then
what's the point?
Some go back into addiction. Some commit suicide.
That's very common. A lot of times, and I would try to prepare a lot of my clients. So I worked in pre-treatment. I worked in the detox part of things. So when they're withdrawing from their substances, and before they get into a treatment program, a rehab, and I would really have that conversation with them if they get a treatment date. Know that when you go there, you're in a bubble. You're in a very supportive bubble, and you can do very well, and you get in touch with parts of yourself that you didn't realize were there anymore, and you feel great, and then you go back to your environment. You go back to the place where you were using, you go back to those relationships that maybe weren't very healthy, and though your mindset may change, your environment's not changed. And that's a really scary place for a lot of people, because they don't know how to cope with it when they get back there. And so that's why, in some ways, the 12-step program is good, because it gives people a support network. Community, you get a sponsor, you have community. Though that's also a little bit dangerous sometimes too, if you don't have other things going on in your life. If your entire part of your life is just recovery, and focus not just on like holistic recovery, but like recovery in terms of, I can't use a drug or substance again, or whatever it is, and that's your whole focus. And there's no focus on the spiritual side of things or the physical side of things. And just looking at building up your community and interacting with people who have very different experiences, maybe no experience with addiction at all. That really helps to have a wider community base. It can get very insular.
I see that. I believe very much that we're not our addictions. Mm-hmm. When I stopped drinking, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna put down, I was at a very good point in my life where I was having a drink every once in a while, and then I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna put down the bottle. I'm gonna try 1 year. I'm gonna see what happens if I do 1 year without drinking. So I did that, and then it was really interesting, because I had a lot of friends who were like, oh, we're going out tonight. I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna go to I didn't want to go to bars and clubs, because I knew what would happen to me in the situations. I'm like, well, I'm going to go to the park tomorrow. If you guys want to come, I'm going to read a book. And they're like, no, man, we're going to be too hungover. I'm like, okay. And then, weeks went by, and they're like, dude, I miss you. Like, why don't we go out for a drink? It's like, let's go to a bar. Let's go to let's just go day drinking. And I'm like, why don't we do day fruit smoothies. And they're just like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, nothing. It's just what I'm really enjoying. I'm like, well, why don't we go rock climbing or running? And they're like, no, man, it's not what I'm really into. And some of them are like, yeah. But then the next day they're like, oh, I'm too hungover. And please don't think that I'm being judgmental of them. But what I'm trying to say in this situation, I started realizing the situation and the people I surrounded myself with. So I'm like, well, if I want to run, I'm going to find some runners. So I found some runners. I want to climb. I found some climbers. But I wasn't like, are you a climber that had an addiction?
Yeah.
Are you a runner that had an addiction?
Like,
no, you're a person.
What difference does it make, right?
It doesn't matter, man. My past was my past. I learned from it.
Yeah.
And then as I started moving towards things that I felt good, and I say this a lot, and I always talk about ownership, it's just like, they were my friends for 5 years and they'll remain my friends. But what makes them my friends is the fact that I can move and I can grow. Friendship is not ownership and holding on to. It's like, you're changing, we can't be friends. No, it's about, we're all going to change and honor that journey of the change in itself.
Yeah.
So through that, I started finding other groups and I started eating healthier. And then, my life kind of changed more. That years down the line, I had a friend, he called me. He's like, I haven't told you this, but I'm putting down the bottle. He's like, I've watched what you've done and it inspired me to do it. But I did it in the sense that when I stopped drinking, this is where I find when it comes to a lot of individuals, it's like they stop something, so they become high and mighty. Well, you don't have to do that. And it's like, I quit smoking too, but I see smokers, you smoke, but I'm going to move away because I'm going to honor myself. But I'm never like, oh, I did this and you shouldn't smoke. It's like, I'm going to live my life the way I want. And whenever you have questions and you want to talk to me, let's have a conversation.
Sure.
I'm going to live my life, and if you are interested in this kind of lifestyle, let's have a conversation. If not, it's okay.
No worries, you do you.
You got to just do you. So finding the groups, finding the communities, and not holding on to that label of, I am an addict, I am this. You're not anything other than who you are today and what you're going to choose to be tomorrow.
That's why that is one, maybe, I guess, criticism I have of the 12-step program. I mean, sometimes it works for some people and it doesn't work for other people.
Yeah.
And the people it works for, fantastic. But one thing I don't like is, like, you do identify yourself as an addict, and you're always an addict, and you're never not an addict. And I get the mentality of, like, if you stop thinking that way, then you may end up slipping. If you continue to remind yourself that you're an addict, you'll make different choices, ideally. But for some people, then they never feel like they can get away from that. And that title of addict, what does that mean, right? And in our society, what that means is that oftentimes you're not a good person, or you're a lazy person, or you're not someone to be trusted. And that's not a good feeling. I get, in terms of 12 step, it's like, that's not what they're saying with that, but that's what people internalize from outside messages.
My friend who's actually in the 12-step program, he's like, well, I have to tell you that I'm an addict. I'm like, what were you addicted to? What were you trying to get? Because my personal belief is you aren't an addict. But there is something that you were really addicted to and something that you were really enjoying, and that if you were to move away the bottle, you could still get it now. So what is it that you wanted? What was it that you were craving, that you were looking for? Because if you continue to say that you're an addict, you're allowing something to have power over you when you're the most powerful thing in the world. So, but I agree with you. To each their own. Sometimes, like, I have friends that this has worked really well for.
That's what they need sometimes. That something to keep them accountable.
I believe that. Find what you need for yourself. I've tried everything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this works for me, so I'm going to go this way. That's the way to be.
And that's what's so important about, in terms of the work that I did with people. And this is going back to what I said before. I thought I would learn how to tell people what the best way to take care of themselves and to fix things would be. And that's not what it is at all. It's talking to people. It's like, what have you tried? What has worked for you in the past? What has not worked for you in the past? Maybe I won't suggest that anymore. But what do you think you need? And let's make a personal goal and set some personal goals for you. I don't know your past. I don't know your experience. And what has worked for somebody maybe in a similar experience for you may not actually work in this case. So it's very client informed. It's very individual. A one size fits all doesn't typically work for people. Doesn't work for humans because we're one size fits no one. That's a tough idea to get across to some people, though.
What I really like what you were talking about before is boundaries. Boundaries are so important. There was a study that I was reading about, and Brene Brown was talking about this in the study that they did, and she interviewed some of the highest spiritual people around the world, and she tried to find out what kept them into their practice, what kept them to be so happy, so blissful, so them. And she did the research, and she found out that what really high monks and happy people and extremely joyful individuals have in their life is boundaries of steel. That they will not break it because this is what they know works for them, and they have these boundaries.
Yeah. Oftentimes that's where we get in trouble. It's like we will cross our boundaries because we feel like we owe somebody something, or we have to do something for somebody, or and this happens a lot with women in the way that we're socialized as well. It's like we will put our own boundaries and discomfort aside if we know it's going to help someone else or comfort them. And we're almost expected to do that. And it's like, well, if you don't do that, then you're being selfish. Boundaries are super important for our own physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health.
So you spoke about the years in working as a social worker and working with a lot of these individuals. Were there some cases that, that really just affected you in certain ways, or just opened you up, or your eyes and ideas of life?
I think everyone did. In small ways. Like I don't know if there's ever one like really big, huge one that I was like, oh my goodness, this is completely life-changing. But there were a few clients, and especially one in particular, it's like, this person is never actually going to stop drinking. And that's what they want. And it may be, to me, not a desirable lifestyle, and I feel badly for them, but this is where they're at in their life.
Yeah.
And so that's really taught me to work with people where they're at. Because if I were to push and push and push, that person's not going to open up to me anymore. They're not going to come back and get the support from me. They're not going to feel supported or heard. They're going to be like, what does that person know? They don't know anything about me. Because clearly if they knew something about me, they would know stopping is not an option right now. And eventually, over time, they reduced the amount they were using. There's some harm reduction in there. And you know what? Great. But my personal goals can't be their personal goals.
Very good.
And I can't put that onto them.
I like how you said that your personal goals can't be theirs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've been able to do things, but I've had to go through things. But I can't project my timeline like, well, I started drinking at this to this age, and that's when you have to stop. Well, some people start in their 20s, some people start in their 30s, some people start in their 40s. People start at their own reasons and their own times for their own reasons. So,
and people stop on their own timeline too,
exactly.
Right? For some people, it's a longer journey to maybe harm reduction and doing it less and less, or only in certain situations, and then eventually, some people can do it cold turkey, and there are some other actual physical withdrawal issues. If someone's been drinking for a long time, to them stopping cold turkey, it can actually be dangerous. But that's another thing. So people have their own timeline, they have their own journeys, and respecting that and seeing that and honoring that is really important.
I think, it's not that I think, I know that it's true, because when I started changing, and I'm just like, I have the answer to it all, listen to me, and then I'm just like, this is the way to do it. And then I realized that, it's not about me telling, it's about me listening.
Yes.
That's the biggest problem. When I was younger and I became a consultant, I'm like, I will tell everybody everything, but like the best way to be a consultant is, what do you think the issue is? Let's listen to you. And how do you feel like you can get there? And it's just like allowing them to arrive but holding space for them and making sure that they understand that there's nothing wrong or broken about them.
And then when you repeat that back to them, they're like, it's like, you get me. How do you know? It's amazing. Like, you just knew the right thing to say. It's like, I was listening. Yeah, but the active listening skill it's a skill. It doesn't come naturally to everyone.
There's the three things, like, people want to be like seen, not looked at, heard, not just listened to, so they can feel understood. Because a lot of times in life, it's just like, okay, they're talking, I can't wait to say this because this is such a good note. Well, this is what you should do. And it's just like, they're like, but you're not listening to me. And they're like, why aren't they not listening to me? Like, it's like, I don't feel seen. And then you walk away and you're like, I don't understand what happened. Because you weren't really holding space and allowing things to be said and to allow things to kind of flow. And it was more like, I'm going to give you my opinion. It's almost like you were not in a conversation, you were in a negotiation. Right? Yeah. And they just didn't buy what you were selling, and they didn't buy what they were selling. You guys walked away, and you're like, why didn't they want my product? It's so good. Where it's just like, well, maybe you guys can not sell each other and just listen and walk away with both of your product, but in a win-win situation, because now you know.
Yeah. I used to do really well in sales for that reason.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy doing sales, but actually, in a way, doing social work is a little bit of sales. It's like you're selling a lifestyle almost. It's like getting people to buy into their own lifestyle that they want and need without them even realizing it sometimes. It's like, what would be your ideal day? Like if you could just like close your eyes and imagine like the most beautiful, lovely day, what does that look like to you? And then working on getting them to that place and convincing them that they can do that. Motivating.
For them to actually close their eyes and visualize a better situation and opportunity, that in itself is powerful. Because a lot of people, they can't. Because they're like, well, this is just what I deserve. But to be able to do that and to visualize and to see gives a hope of chance, because we can be what we see, what we believe we achieve. But that breaks in our belief system. And a lot of times when you have people surrounding you saying the opposite, some people will rise up and some people won't.
They'll just shrink in.
They'll shrink in and be like, and you can always tell by their stance a lot of times when they're more hunched, it's because they're trying to protect their heart and they're trying to protect their body. You can really tell by a person's posture of exactly how they feel a lot of times in their life. But yes, as you were saying about that, the addictions and people going into it and the mantras and the way that they speak about themselves, the way that they see about themselves, and not telling them like, okay, listen, you're messed up. Here's the steps to do it. You do this and you'll be okay. Instead of being like, even Kung Fu Panda 3, they're just like, it's like, Po, teach them how to be the better version of them, not a better version of you.
I love that. Right? I actually have never seen that.
It's a great movie with a lot of philosophies where it's just like, I say to my brother, I'm like, don't learn Kung Fu, learn Yossi Fu, because his name is Yossi. I'm like, learn your technique, learn your style. It's okay to stand on the shoulders of giants, but not to be the giant, but to get a view to see where they're looking so you can see where you want to go.
Super important. I really like that.
Right?
Version of you.
So, if you were to, after being in that field for so long, if people who are new and eager to get into it, what about you? Let's say if you were to go back to yourself now, and you're young and eager to get into it, what advice would you give to yourself then?
Listen more than talk. And you don't know what people need. And that's okay. There is sometimes a pressure to feel like you need to know how to help people. And that it's something that you're going to do externally that helps them internally. And that's not really how it goes.
Yeah.
So listen, you're not the one doing the work.
You're not the one doing the work. That's so simple but so profound. Yeah.
I can't work any harder than the other person's willing or able to do.
Yeah.
So don't kill yourself trying. You know, if it's not a personal failure on you if somebody else isn't getting to a place where you think they should be. That's another thing. Work with the client where they're at. People have their own timelines and their own journeys and their own desires and things that they want. And it's okay. It may not be what you would want, but they're not you. And I don't have to live their life. So that helps with boundaries too. It's not personal. It's not a personal failure. It has nothing to do with you. You are a sounding board a lot of the time. Somebody reflecting the good parts of themselves back to them, which often doesn't happen. Because when they put good things out into society, and there's so much stigma around mental health, society doesn't see those good things that are, it absorbs all those good things and then it shoots out all of these bad things at them, and that's all they're getting out. So when they come in to see me, and I can see these little like sparks of good things coming out of them, and instead of absorbing them and just like keeping them and hiding them away, I'm like, this is what you just said to me, this is what you showed me, and this is what that is, and this is how it comes off. And that's a beautiful thing. You're a beautiful person. And yeah, sure, like some of the insecurity and some of the rough around the edges things come out too, but those aren't the things I'm going to focus on. Those aren't the things I'm going to say, I'm going to grab onto and say, that's you. This is, you know, this is who you are, and this is all you're ever going to be. I say, I see that. I can see where it's coming from. Let's focus on the good stuff. Yeah. Let's focus on the positive. And that's actually not to say that some of their difficulties and insecurities are not good things. That's the other thing. They're just things. Yeah. They're not good or bad. They just are. And that also helps reframe it a little bit, and being able to acknowledge and accept one's feelings. And it's okay to feel that way sometimes. It's okay to have these dark thoughts and these dark feelings. But what are we going to do about them? How are we going to get that light back? That's a lot of my work, I think. And it would be tough. And for me, when I was working, because I would like to spend a good amount of time with people and working through these things with them. But in the environment I was in, the kind of agency I was working with, it was more brief counseling and brief crisis intervention. So if I took too long with any one client, it was like, well, you know, you're coddling them, or you're babying them, or, you know, come on, let's go. We've got more people to push through these doors. Let's work with more people. And that was a big part of my move away from wanting to work in this field. It felt like it was treating people like numbers. It got to a certain point where it was like that.
That's hard.
And it's getting worse with funding. There are less staff being hired, less programs being funded. So you're getting more people into fewer programs with fewer staff. So that personalized attention it's hard to get. And also, so I worked in a residential setting. So people could stay there for up to 2 weeks, sometimes a little bit more if they really needed it. And so now they're moving towards making everything outpatient. So a client might go in to do a workshop or like a day program, and they go in, they go for the day, and then they go home. Trouble is, not everyone has a home. And it's especially somebody who gets really deep into their addiction. A lot of times they get to a point where they've lost everything. They don't have family they can stay with. They don't have a place anymore. They're living in shelters or on the street. And can't blame them for saying, you know, if their main goal every day is to figure out where can I safely sleep and where maybe can I get some food, it's really hard to focus on, like, well, what does my dream day look like? And, you know, get all of this, like, this inner stuff worked out, when it's like your daily living needs are not being met, or they're precarious. Yeah.
There's one guy I met. There's one guy I met downtown, because every year I like to give out clothing or feed, and just, to be honest, I just like to have conversations with everybody else. And there's this one guy I was sitting with, and I was asking him about his day, and what led to him being on the street. And he's like, it's not that I'm choosing to be on the street because of this. I'm a year and a half clean. No drugs, no alcohol, nothing. And I sleep on the street because the shelters are filled with addicts and drug addicts and alcohol, like people that are still drinking. Is like, I can't be there because it's going to bring me back into it. So I choose to be out here. And this is why I always say, it's like, when you see somebody, do not make a story for them, because you don't know what they're going through. You see a homeless person on the street, you're like, well, he's doing this. Don't.
Yeah.
Allow them to share, allow them to say, or you know what, take your own. I understand we do judgment for survival. We're constantly judging things around us because help survive.
Risk assessment.
Exactly, risk assessment and things like that. But at the same time, give if you want to give. Don't give if you don't want to give, but don't make a story of why.
Yeah.
And if you see somebody, don't push them below you to make yourself. Don't make somebody feel small to make you feel bigger. At the same time, don't make yourself small to make somebody else feel bigger. It just doesn't work. And when we really take a moment to sit down and talk to people, oh man, it's amazing, because everybody has a story. Like everybody will. And the thing is, it's like, those people that I've met, I've learned so much from. I even met a multimillionaire. He's like, I had everything. I gave it all up, decided to live on the street, never been happier. I'm like, interesting.
Very interesting.
You would not think of a story like that, but he's like, I traveled around, I had this money. He's like, but I find that I have everything I need being here on the street and enjoying my days like this. And I'm like, that's a really interesting perspective. Not like, well, in society you should do this. It's just like, well, thank you for inspiring me to look in the world in a completely different way. Thank you.
Decide what works for you.
Exactly.
And that goes back to what they want. Maybe it's not what you would want to do, but that's what they want to do.
Yeah, it's like, instead of being like, well, let me tell you what you should be doing, it's just like, okay, so I'm gonna go over there.
Yeah.
So you were, because we're gonna use the word past, like you were in that field. Why the war?
A few things happened. I think I was a few years past when I probably should have left. I had been thinking for quite a while that it was not the environment for me. I loved clients. I loved what I did. I felt I was good at it. But I didn't like the way I was told I had to do it. Very impersonal, very like churning them out. And the way it was going, like it just felt so... we weren't looking at the issues that lead people to get to this point. Like, it's definitely important to be able to do like crisis management and work with people after they get to the point where they need help. But I think there's a big part of me that wants to look at how can we help people before it gets there. And it just, a lot of it just seemed like Band-Aids. It felt really superficial and just very surface. And I get it. Like, there's only so much you can do in a short amount of time with people that you don't get to spend a lot of time with. You have a short window of time to get these things done, and so there's like, you have to sit down and do assessments with them and give them referrals for places and help them do the applications to get in. And so it gets down to business. It's like it's a process, and it's a lot of paperwork and all these things. But for me, the actual human connection is really important. And I just felt stretched in a million different directions there, and didn't feel very supported in the work that I did through employers. It's like we became a number as well, and we were expendable, right? And that's the thing with this field is pretty saturated. They're churning out social workers all the time. It's not like they have a lack of candidates. If we burn out, somebody else is happy to step in and take our place. And just a lot of things like that. It's the pay is not great. As much as we'd like to be altruistic and say we're doing this just to, help people, we also have to live.
Your survival, yeah,
especially in such an expensive city as Toronto. And I would be talking to your brother sometimes, and so he works in the live events tech industry, And there are people who are pushing road cases at rock and roll shows making $25-$30 an hour. I'm making less than that dealing with people in severe emotional and physical crisis. And it just shows you how much society values those sort of skills, which is to say they don't.
And the thing is, it's like people in that field, they need support. It's like you're supporting people, but you also need your own support. It's like the system, the job that's in, it's just like, you want us to do amazing work and you want us to support people, but you're not supporting us. And I find that can wear and tear out an individual, as you were saying.
It's exhausting, and feeling like you're not, none of us does this for the glory. It's not a thing. In fact, a lot of times you don't ever get to see if the work that you did was helpful for someone. A lot of times it's planting seeds, and then they go off and they flourish somewhere else, or never. Like, who knows? But so it's not something where you're getting instant gratification, but just knowing that that we're appreciated by the employer even is huge. It's meaningful. But when it feels like we're not valued, that's tough. That is tough, and it's relayed in a lot of different ways, and much of it is support, funding, emotionally. Like, I had my own therapist. I think it's important for anybody to have one, but especially someone who's dealing a lot with other people's crisis and stuff, to have my own outlet, deal with my own things. I end up getting involved in a lot of union stuff. Worker and labor relations, which I found was really empowering. It really helped me to feel like I had a little bit of power and control back. But that's exhausting too, because it's got its own politics and stuff going on. And ultimately, I guess it's the politics that of the helping profession, which make it difficult for me to want to stay in it.
It's interesting, something that can seem so simple, yet is so complicated on so many levels. And that's just like the person, they're dealing with their own politics. The people that are talking with the person dealing with their own politics, it's just like, and as we said, it's just like, it's not about me telling you, it's about me listening to you. And it's about finding the support and the group and the things that help to flourish and help us grow. And you, like, I really did like what you said. It's just like, well, you might just plant the seed, but they might flourish with somebody else. But it's not like, well, I started it.
Yeah.
It's you were a person to a person.
Exactly. That human connection.
And I don't know why that, just saying being a person to a person in nowadays, it's just so, it's like, wow, that's right. It's just like, yeah, that's what we're kind of missing. And you said the human touch is really missing with a lot of stuff. And it's not like, well, look where I'm at and look what I'm doing, so you can do it. It's like, no, I'm not you. I didn't have a family like you. I did not have a family like you. I didn't come from an orphanage, and I didn't come from this. It's just like, you had your life experience, and you dealt with different teachers, different things. It's like, but I didn't do it the same way as you.
Yeah.
So I can't be you. I want to be me, like, right? Be a better version of them, not a better version of me.
Exactly.
So we spoke about addictions, and we talked about mental health and social work, and you know, a lot of the politics that come out. Now, somebody who's been in that field for so long, and that's about to make the change, what's the next step for you?
That's what I'm working on. That's what I'm trying to figure out. I had to work through a lot of feelings of guilt leaving, and you know, some of that's ego. And I had to check that and look at, like, why do I feel guilty? Do I feel like I'm the only person who can do this job? No, I'm not. There are a lot of great workers out there. And sometimes I felt guilty because I knew that some individual clients felt super comfortable with me. We'd build up a great rapport. They were doing a lot of really great work. They would come back and we'd work some more together. And feeling like, am I abandoning these people? So that's where boundaries come in as well. It's like, I'm not their friend. I'm not. Like, I care about them, but we're not friends. We're not family. There is a boundary there. And that helps me keep it out of my personal life. So yeah, working through feelings of guilt for leaving. And then for saying, I'm tired. After 8 years of working frontline crisis, I'm tired. And dealing with my own crises in my personal life as well, and working through all of that. I need time away from doing that. And that's not to say that maybe I'll never go back. I don't know. We'll see. But there are so many other parts of my life. Just like I was talking about how if their entire life is just recovery and it's just that little bubble of like you're only talking to people in recovery and that's your whole social. For me, if that's my only identity and worth is my job and the things that I do and my life revolves around that, I don't feel fulfilled. And for a while I wasn't. I'm a very creative person, and I didn't feel like I was using that enough. I love acting. I love performing. I love being part of that. And first of all, I didn't really have time to do it. And then second of all, it was just like, well, what's the point?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get back in touch with that side of me. And it's been a learning curve for me. And I'm getting back in touch with who I am and who I was. Like, honestly, I was just surviving. And it's funny for me to say that because that's what a lot of my clients were doing, right? They're just surviving. They're just doing what they need to do to get by day to day. And for me, that was kind of the same thing.
See, when we look at it as an addiction, it's so much easier for us to be like, well, that's the reason. But when we look at it at life, sometimes we're surviving if we're not touching a bottle or doing anything. And that next transition of where to go, a lot of times you were like, follow your purpose. Well, I don't know what it is right now. Follow your passion. I'm not really passionate about anything. Are you saying that there's something wrong with me?
Or I'm passionate about a lot of things. Like, which one do I
want everything.
Pick one. Like,
it is an idea. Well, my belief in life, and this is my own belief, is just do it. Start one thing, try it, because it'll eventually lead you down the road. And as you do that, at least you create a lot of skills, a lot of experience, and a lot of knowledge when you do it. But don't believe the hype of follow your passion, follow your purpose. Be motivated. Are you joking me? Like, I'm not like, oh, I'm so motivated, I'm going to get out of bed. I'm like, I don't want to get out of bed today, so I'm going to find my motivation. I'm going to find it because I want to, because I believe that I believe innately that there is something inside of me that there is something special and there is something I can do. And it's not a belief I've always had my whole life. It's something that I found. And as you're going through this transition, and a transition that a lot of people are going through, because you're so in it right now, like, what would you say to people? What would you say to yourself?
Well, right now I'm taking a career exploration workshop. And the interesting thing is, next week is our last class, and we only just this week started talking about actual really careers. Most of the work we did before that was focusing on ourselves and sifting through what we want or what we need, what we value. So we would do different exercises, which seemed like they weren't at all related to like anything. And it's funny because it's some of the same exercises I would do with some of my clients, like the whole dream day scenario where you're imagining this. But from that, you can extrapolate what your values are. What about that day was the most meaningful, beautiful thing to you. And that's what you're going to need in your life. So eventually when we start looking at careers, how is that going to fit in there? So for me, what I would tell myself if I was starting this earlier or like by myself is try to be honest with what you actually need.
Honesty, yeah.
It was hard for me to admit that I needed certain things in my life because it felt like it was going against what was expected of me. Like, I got to a point where I identified myself as somebody who helps people. And I got to the point where I'm like, I need to not be helping people. That's what I need right now. I need to be working with myself and on myself. That was a hard thing to admit.
Wow. Yeah.
Because when I did my dream day, I wasn't helping other people. I think that in some way, just the way I am, I'll always look for ways to help people in my daily life. I'm very receptive to people who seem like they need some support. I'm very empathetic that way, but I don't formally need to be doing that, and that doesn't have to be my identity and what I associate myself with. So yeah, be honest about what you actually need. And the other thing, an exercise that we did, which it seems so simple, but I hadn't actually done it, was look at the things in your life right now and figure out what in your life is working for you and what parts of that you want to keep. Mm-hmm. What's not working for you. Specifically lay it out and say it. I guarantee, as much as I was like, I can't do that job anymore, and I can't do that thing, and I can't go back there, I can't do this. Why? What about that was not okay for me? Because that will also help me in my journey to find out what I need and don't need in a future job.
Yeah.
If I end up going to a completely different field, but it's still got aspects of the job that I wasn't comfortable with or couldn't do anymore, or didn't want to do anymore, then I'm in the same boat I was back at square one. So really getting in touch with what you need and being honest about that, and then saying very clearly, this is also what I don't need and want. So I think I felt so silly when I realized, when they did that and they said that and I did that exercise, and I sat there and went, I hadn't actually sat down and mapped that out for myself. So it's and using a lot of the same things that I use with my clients, which was hilarious for me. I was like, that's why it's easier for us to do it with other people a lot of times. Sometimes we're too close to ourselves or people around us to really be objective enough to do it and to make yourself do it. It was a little bit funny, which also shows, you know what, like, I'm not any different from the people I was working with, right? We're all people. We all have our journeys. We all have things that we need to work through, and a lot of the same things, a lot of the same like counseling techniques and whatever, they work for people, not addicts, not as people. And that, when I would talk to people, it's like, look, yes, I'm giving you these tools and we're talking about doing these activities, but I do them too. And I do a lot of the ones, but not all of them, obviously, because I found a couple, I was like, oh, ouch, that's hitting close to home.
I think that's great. I think these are really good nuggets of information and things that we all need to see. It's like, when we take away the word homeless, we take away the word addict, we take away the word whatever, and we stop using these words and we rehumanize people and see them as a person, then we realize that we're so connected and that there's so much similarities in every single one of us, and that what somebody needs is also very similar, not always the same, but what we need. And that to be seen, heard, and understood, not to be like, this is the only way to achieve, here's the 5 steps to success. It's like, there's no shortcut to you. But the fastest way to get to you is ask yourself questions like you did. What do I need? What don't I need? What's working for me? What hasn't been working for me? And willing to put the steps in to make the difference, to make the change. So, I want to say thank you so much for today. Absolutely. You're amazing. This was awesome. I'm happy I finally got you here to do this.
I know, that's tough for me.
And there will be more of her in the future. I guarantee that. And thank you everybody for tuning in and for being part of this. I hope you really enjoyed it. And like always, feel free to leave your comments, your questions, and anything below. I will put our information so you can get in contact with her and myself. And just have a beautiful day. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
That was so cool. That was such a good conversation.
It was great.
I love that. And it's neat because I got to the point where...
Shall we do it?
Oh, yeah, right. We've got like our